In life, we will meet resistance, which can leave us feeling worn down and worn out. But we can find a reason to keep going. Show up, push through, and never give up.
Isn't it true that facing trouble in life can make us question everything that we believe about God? We may wonder if God is really who people say he is. Is God really good to me if my family is still broken up? Is God really loving if I struggle with depression? Is God really worth following when it doesn't seem like God shows up when I'm in a real need situation? Basically, in moments of pain and setback, we're asking ourselves this question: is God really worth trusting and following? Sometimes we feel like the answer is definitely yes, but other times, well, we're just not sure. And that's when we start to struggle and find any reason for sticking with our faith and taking all this God stuff seriously. Eventually, there comes a point when these kinds of unanswered and unresolved questions might cause us to give up on God. When we live in such difficult time in the world, it's hard to think God cares. When life is so stressful and tough, it's easy to wonder if God is really there to help. When trouble comes, it's easy to think it might be best to try and get through it on our own. These are big questions, and they're normal questions to ask when we're going through difficult times. And the question for us as we wonder these things out loud in our minds is, can God handle this? Does following Jesus really change everything when we go through something super difficult? Is God still good when life is hard? Well, about 2,000 years ago, Jesus lived, walked, and talked on this earth. And while he was here, several of his closest followers wrote down everything they heard him say and saw him do. These events are found in 4 books of the Bible known as the Gospels, each named after the guy who wrote it: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is super important because it means the words we're reading in these books aren't just words. They're real things that Jesus said to his followers that can help us today. And it also means that we have a record from people who actually hung out with Jesus and knew him up close and personal. We get to see what they had to say about him. And that changes everything, because for generations of people of Israel have been trying to find this, right? He's the perfect representation of what God is like. And when it comes to building a resilient faith, this is super helpful to keep in mind. Today we're going to look at something Jesus said when talking with his closest friends, telling them what's ahead for them in life. Take a look. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have trouble. Immediately Jesus tells the disciples that he wants them to have peace. Why? Because he knows what lies ahead for them in this world, and that's trouble. Let's be honest, that doesn't sound like great news, does it? I mean, who wants to hear Jesus biblically say, I want you to have peace, but about everything, because life is going to be really hard? To the disciples listening, this wouldn't have been that surprising. They were lower income Jewish men living in a Roman Empire where speaking out or challenging authority could get you killed. They understood trouble, but there was a part of them that thought maybe this Jesus guy would change things. Maybe he would fix all the bad stuff and do away with all the hard stuff. But then Jesus says this, and the crazy thing is, the disciples had no idea just how true his words were. So when Jesus says, you will have trouble, he's speaking to the disciples himself. Jesus knows no one escapes difficulty in this world. But Jesus didn't stop there. Keep reading with me. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Jesus tells us that we can take heart, meaning we can have confidence because he has overcome everything in this world and everything that the world can throw at us. Again, the disciples have no idea what's coming, like how Jesus is hours away from death. But they also didn't know that they were just a few days away from Jesus coming back to life. So when Jesus says, I have overcome the world, he's talking as the Son of God who will die and literally overcome death, the worst trouble the world can throw at us. And that means all the trouble we face, Jesus has overcome. all the pain, all the disappointment, all the suffering, all the trouble that comes with living in this world. Jesus has overcome it. But what does that mean exactly? It means that the worst stuff isn't the final word. It means when things get bad, they will. The story isn't over though. When Jesus defeated death, he rewrote the end of the story. Suffering and pain and loss don't win. Jesus and everything Jesus represents, like love, compassion, mercy, grace, goodness, justice, and peace, wins. That's the final word. No matter what trouble you are dealing with, you can choose to have hope and never give up on God. Every circumstance you face, every trouble that comes your way, everything that tries to convince you God isn't good or can't be trusted, we can be resilient in the face of all things, knowing that God is walking with us, working for us, and helping us get through it all. In those hard and awful moments, you have access to God who is in it with you. In this world, you will have trouble, but because of Jesus, because of the resurrection, you can have peace. And I believe that can give you hope in even the most hopeless circumstances. The kind of hope that changes everything. The kind that helps you believe you can get up, keep going, and keep believing there is still good to come from God. That kind of hope helps you build resilience in your faith. So, what can you do to begin having a resilient faith when facing difficult things? The first thing you can ask yourself is, what is happening? Ask yourself, what trouble in your life now or from the past is causing you to wonder if God is good or worth following? Maybe it was someone who let you down in a significant way. Maybe it's something that happened that was totally out of your control. Maybe it was something tragic or traumatic. Maybe it's something a Christian did to you or around you that caused you to question everything. Get really honest about what it is and that it's happening or happened that caused you to want to give up on God. Second thing, what is true no matter what? Answering this question isn't a quick fix, and it isn't saying that the trouble you're facing isn't real big or overwhelming. But asking this question will begin to shift the way that you see your circumstances, which is exactly where resilience begins. The truth is, no matter what trouble you faced or are facing or will face in the future, Jesus is with you. He can help you build resilience as you keep going step by step through it all. And remembering that God is good and God is still writing the story will give you a different perspective. The third thing, what can you do? When everything feels like it's falling apart, when the trouble feels overwhelming, get back to the basics. Remember what we know to be true about God because of Jesus and what we know to be true about what Jesus offers us. God is good. God is with us. God gives us peace. Because of that, we can never give up on God. But if getting into that place feels too difficult right now, start with just giving your trouble that you're facing to God on a daily basis. But it should be real. Instead of giving up on God, when you experience trouble, get honest with God. Talk openly about the questions that you have, the doubts that you're experiencing, or the help that you need. Continue to show up and connect with God is a great way to build that resilience in your faith. Look, I know it's hard, and I know that trying to show up with a real faith is difficult when life is difficult. Developing a resilient faith isn't easy, especially when you've been hurt, forgotten, disappointed, and more. In those moments, of course, you're tempted to believe that God isn't the God that you thought. That's why it's so important to remember what's true. Remember, never give up on God. And with that in mind, I want you to think about this question as you head out today. What's one thing that I want to remember is true about God, no matter what?